All right, everyone, here's an experimental Live with Greg, here with Barry Toronto again, and this is going to be a little bit more of the details that will visually be seen with what he was talking about in the previous episode. So take it away, Barry.
Hi there. The last episode we talked a lot about pictures, and I felt like talking about pictures without actually showing the pictures was not as good as actually showing the pictures. So I wanted to do it again, and this time show the pictures we were talking about in the last episode. This picture is actually from college. This is my second year of college. I was working with dancers and did a project in Birmingham, and was working a lot with motion. So that was something I did then. And then later, when I came to California, this is around 1993, I was doing a series of dog motion pictures. So this is one of the pictures from that period. It's called Yoga Posture. And I worked on that for maybe a year or two. And then after that, 1998, I did another series on water, which is also quite about motion. This is the picture that was done around 1998. These are creeks. There's slight time exposure, so this might be a quarter of a second long, as were the dogs. The dogs are also about a quarter of a second long. This was done in that period, and then this is actually from just a couple years ago. This is another water picture, and you can see, especially right side up, that the little squiggles is what I was interested in. So this is basically light reflecting on water, and that's what we're looking at. Around that same period, I worked on a series I called Stage Sets, and this was one of those. This was called View from the Hip, and I think that was around 1998. Reprinted in 2005 apparently. So there we go, that's Stage Sets. And then I moved on to bodyscapes, not much after that. This picture here is one of the first bodyscapes I felt was really successful in terms of taking a body and making it become more of a landscape and less about the body itself. This one still confuses people what it is, and I kind of like that. I like the way it represents mountain landscape. This is another photo from that same period. Also trying to do bodyscapes, so the body is a landscape. This is more recently, maybe like 3 years ago. Still working on, and I've really enjoyed working with two bodies. Two bodies makes it a little more abstract. I like the curves and the way they do become very landscapey, and the way they juxtapose with each other. This is more recent too, probably a couple years old. Also still the same thing. I like water too, apparently. We had talked about water in motion, and this is one that is an attempt from water. And water is difficult, because it's moving and fast, and model has to be still. There's a little blur, but I like the feeling of this, and I like the look of the water. And that's a fairly fast exposure, so you're not getting although you still are getting a little bit of that writing effect, but it's a little faster, so you're really freezing the water more here. After that, I was working on reflections. I started this series probably like 8 years after the bodyscapes. So this was done in Amsterdam. Basically, there's a photograph in a window of a beauty spot. So what we're seeing is a picture of that face in the window merging with the reflection across the street, which is all the buildings and things inside the window, which in this case is really just the face on the other side of the glass. But there is some blending here, which is some kind of screen inside the store, or beauty shop, I should say. This was done in San Francisco. This is This is on Columbus Ave, and it's in front of a restaurant, so you're seeing chairs and things inside the restaurant. I really like the way the inside and outside merges. So this is probably my biggest interest. As you can see, the reflections are all backwards. The restaurant is written backwards, and things inside the restaurant will be right reading. This picture is a little more of motion effect. I like the feeling of it. It's called Pink Bicycle. It's done in Florence, and it's also is a reflection. So I'm looking into a sort of thrift shop. I don't know exactly what you call them in Florence, but there's a lot of things in there for sale, all juxtaposed together. The bicycle is across the street, and it's reflecting in the glass. This is from Hawaii more recently. This is also photographing into a gallery. So the water is a reflection on this one, and the paintings are inside the gallery. I'm still not sure why they're all curvy. I think they really were that way in the gallery. I don't think it's a glass, but sometimes I take a picture, I come back, and I remember the basic framing and what I was looking at, but I don't remember all the details necessarily. And this is one of those cases where I'm not really sure if those are wavy frames or somehow the glass did that, but I believe they're wavy frames. And whenever you have a shadow, a darker area, you get more of the detail inside, and when it's a lighter area, you get more of the detail outside. So that makes for a nice juxtaposition too. We mentioned Burning Man last time, so I just brought a couple of prints from that. This is called The Child Within, I believe. And I thought it was a beautiful sculpture. Great idea. I stayed with Bliss Camp. This is from their first project, the first year. That's Bliss at sunrise. And I brought a couple of music photos, Gillian Welsh, David Rawlings from Hardly Strictly Bluegrass.
So in that one right there, like, what do you think you've captured in that appeals to you?
I think that she seems very intent in the moment. He's playing along with her. I felt like they're really in sync with each other, even though they're not necessarily looking at each other. I like her expression and the way she's in the middle of a note. And I just feel like it's a moment that captures the singing and the spirit of her and, you know, them playing together. I don't think that was said very well, but I like the singing.
Like the essence of her as a musician, you think, is captured in this moment? Or the essence of the performance?
No, I'm interested in the timing of her singing and them playing together more. But I do like her as a performer quite a bit. It's like this one. There's just, it's a moment of joy or something where he's singing. And so it's that I feel his singing. And I felt that a little bit with Gillian as well. There you go. And so now we talked about panoramics and the theme of time. This is a panoramic I was talking about where I'm panning along with the figure. So if I'm moving in time with the figure, you get this broken up, repeated pattern. It's part of my wonky series. And there are definitely wonkier ones. But... And then the other one that I talked about with time was this. So this is actually not a panoramic. It's two photographs, you know, one's flipped and they're put together. It is a reflection picture, so that's why you get all the nice texture down below. What I was interested in this was the moment of time. One moment to another and putting that together. So from one image to the other, it talks about time and things changing. This is actually the right picture because it's backwards from the reflection, and then here it's reversed because that picture is flipped. And then we had also talked about just panoramics in general, kind of described other ones I was doing. And so this is a panoramic too. This is actually from Spain, from the Camino, from the the walk. And that's it. Thank you very much. I hope that helps clarify some of the...
One question. The dancing photo.
Right.
Did you have any one photo or experience where it opened up this idea that you've worked with now for, 30 years, 40 years, of motion captured, the energy of motion captured in...
Well, I was very interested in motion photography. I also was doing time exposures on multiple pictures with flash at night. So I did really like the idea of motion. I worked with that quite a bit. I think water was a takeoff from that, but it was a little different in that I was still freezing things and wasn't doing a complete motion thing. The dog motion pictures was a really exciting time for me also, and it was very similar to the dance pictures I did earlier. I was actually panning with the dogs, but it was meant to be about the spirit of dog, and that idea that a picture can elicit feeling, right? Not necessarily in detail, but in mood or motion, and the dogs are about motion. They were about running.
So in the two themes of miniatures and reflections, it seems that there's nothing in motion. You're taking maybe even body skips to a degree.
Well, I think those projects were really different. I think I went away from the motion idea to some large degree. I started photographing differently, and I was more interested in form and shape maybe with the bodyscapes than I had been with the dance things in the beginning. So I haven't really worked with motion in the same way. Even the water pictures are more about an instant in time and the movement of the water. I call it the writing on the water because it really is about the markings that the water makes. Whereas the dog motion pictures were more about the feeling of the whole photograph being motion and in time and in movement. So these have still and motion, and really less about the motion than the markings with the water pictures.
Could you name a cornerstone train of thought that you can see threaded through all your work?
Well, water for sure. I don't know about all my work, but I've always photographed water in some fashion or another, even with the landscapes and the beach. Water has been an important part of my photos, and water is about movement and motion as well. But I think that I photograph in a lot of different ways. My bodyscapes are very different than my reflection pictures. They're really about different feelings. One is about landscape, nature. The other is much more detailed, and there's a lot going on in this picture, and I like the complexity of it, but it's very different than the feeling of the bodyscape. So I think that my work has changed, and I've tried to not stay in one genre or idea. So as far as the thread is probably me, but I've tried to branch and do different things.
All right. Cool. Thanks. Anything else?
I don't think so. Thank you very much.
For you.